More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and
George. All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com podcast, and it's been quite a day. We have some massive news that just broke right before we started recording the pod, and that is the announcement of Jim Nagy, the former executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, will become Oklahoma's next, I guess you could say, general manager, a process that's been set in motion since the departure of Curtis Lofton, and they bring in a guy that everybody in the football world knows, and Jim Nagy. Everybody knows him from the Senior Bowl. We welcome in Josh McCuistion, Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya. I'm Carey Murdoch, of course. And Josh, let's just start with you. In the world of scouting, professional football, all-star college games, I mean, Jim Nagy, a huge, huge name.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you guys know I relish the offseason in the NFL far more than I do the regular season. And he's been the Senior Bowl, like I don't think people realize where it was when he took over and where he's taken it. So from a leadership organizational standpoint, I think that says a lot. And then at the same time, that's the biggest thing to me about this, guys. Like, this is a guy that has found player after player in the Senior Bowl that was at some small school, Lenore Rhine or one of these crazy schools that nobody ever knows about. And he has the kind of contacts to perhaps for Oklahoma to recruit those guys in the portal, in the coming years, that kind of stuff, to forget all his NFL contacts that they can sell to portal guys, high school guys. Guys, I really struggle to find a way people wouldn't be very excited about this hire.
That's actually one of the first things I addressed on the board about it, and it was one of our subscribers on the Crimson Corner. They were like, "Good, no more Kennesaw State," and I was like, "Hey, you might kind of, this is not your guy. Like, he's not going to be out there just trying to get kids from Alabama and Georgia to come to Oklahoma. He's going to find he's going to turn over every rock." And you're probably more likely with Jim Nagy and his staff that he's going to assemble. George, we'll get to that here in just a second. He's probably more likely to go out and find those hidden gems than others might be, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's what you're looking for. Like, in a world where we know Oklahoma may not be able to go out and spend what Texas can or Oregon can or Ohio State can, you're going to have to find value. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that he can do, where he goes and finds a guy that maybe not everybody knows. I mean, guys, people forget, Jared Verse was at Albany, and Florida State just happened to be watching a Syracuse highlight where Jared Verse was giving, Syracuse all kinds of trouble, and they earmarked that. And the guy ends up being a first-round pick for them, 2 or 3 years later. So that's the kind of stuff where you do have to have this edge, and you've got to have these guys that know how to evaluate, and particularly in this era of college football, know how to evaluate college-level talent. And I just can't imagine there are many guys who have watched more tape, have had to make more real-time decisions about college players than Jim Nagy.
Okay, obviously we're seeing the fallout from all across the NFL, the college football world. Everybody's saying that this is a grand slam hire. Actually, I can't remember who it was that said it's not a home run hire, it's a walk-off grand slam hire. And I thought that would be the case. But the announcement comes today, George. And first off, let's just go over some of the details. I know our biggest concerns were like, and it's hard to say this. We did not break this story. We had caught wind that something was happening, and Jim Nagy was a name that was going around. We're not trying to say we had this story and we just ran out of time. No, we didn't break it. We didn't have enough information to break it. But we had been talking about Jim Nagy a lot the last 24 hours. And our concern was like, okay, well, if he comes to Oklahoma, is he going to give up the Senior Bowl? Like, is this going to be like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out situation? It's pretty clear. Yes, he said goodbye, even put up a tweet, right, saying goodbye basically to the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
But he is coming in here, and he is going to form his own front office. And it's going to be he and he alone.
He's been essentially given the keys to the program, is the way that I understand it. Like, in the sense that, not that, Brent Venables, obviously, as the head coach, has, a lot of say in everything, but, like Jim Nagy, and I've said this from the beginning when they started the GM search, whoever they hired was more so about the program than, like, Brent Venables' future. Like, if for some reason the football team, isn't any good next year and they have to fire Brent Venables, Jim Nagy's here to stay. Like, that's what my understanding of it is, and I think what made this job extremely attractive to Jim Nagy is that they're giving him pretty much autonomy to hire his own staff. He is going to hire a front office that involves scouts, financial people that are going to help with negotiations, because that's kind of one of my questions is, well, he's never really been a part of negotiating contracts and things like that. I think he's going to hire people that are well versed in that area. He's just kind of, they are legitimately, and they've been saying it for a while, that they're building an NFL like front office. This is going to look like an NFL front office. You are going to have a real general manager with executives underneath him, and then the head coach underneath him as well. And it's almost like it's its own department now within the athletic department. And so it's super interesting, and I think it's an outstanding hire. I don't know if Jim Nagy's going to be a great GM. I think his background says that he's a damn near perfect fit for the position, considering he was 20 years in the NFL as a scout, worked in a front office, and then has really turned the Senior Bowl into a premier all-star game in which he, his whole job the last 7 years has been identifying the best talent in college football to come play in this tournament or in this game. And his connections, I think, are obviously unbelievable. And I think one thing that stands out to me about Jim Nagy is the way that he has marketed the Senior Bowl. Like, he's done an outstanding job of growing it. And, he's very active on social media, very opinionated. I don't know if that will continue, but last week, one of our conversations was they need somebody to kind of be the Pied Piper, the person that can go out and say, hey, we need your money. We need you guys to help support the program. I think Jim Nagy can be that guy. Like, as much as he's going to be really important in terms of evaluating talent, managing the roster, I think he'll also be great in front of the media, in front of fans, on social media. Like, his presence alone, I think, will help the program a lot. So I think it's great, and I'm kind of rambling here, but my last point is I don't know if he'll be a great GM, but I do think this hire signals, one, the respect that the Oklahoma football program still has nationally, because he didn't have to take this job, right? Like, from my understanding, he interviewed for other GM jobs in college football, and there was interest from other schools in him as their GM. He chose Oklahoma, right? And then number two is that Oklahoma kind of put its nuts on the table here, to be blunt. Like, we've talked a lot about the failing of the athletic department over the last year. I mean, we have to give credit where credit's due. And, the university, Joe Harris, Joe Castiglione, Randall Stevenson, who was a major part of this process. I mean, to be able to go out and get somebody like a Jim Nagy is a huge deal. And it just tells you, not that we didn't think they weren't all in and turning around the program, but I think they did a hell of a job in this GM search and being able to get somebody like this.
Just one of those things that I think that when we all heard it here over the last 48, 72 hours, that it seems like this is a situation that we were all kind of shocked. Like, like Jim Nagy, the Senior Bowl guy. And for them to be able to pull this off, it's good news for an athletic department, for a fan base particularly, that, I mean, hell, when you get onto the Crimson Corner and you see the reaction from a lot of the fans, it seems like this is the first time in a long time that everybody can be in agreement. Like, okay, like they did something good today.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
I'll be honest with you. I was... So how this all came about for us, just kind of, and like I said, we're not sitting here claiming that, we have it the whole time. We're not doing that. But I'd heard a name last night. Was it last night?
Yeah.
Is that when this all started? And I was talking to someone, they said, well, heard it's somebody that was in here from the Senior Bowl. And I was like, Senior Bowl? I was like, Jim Nagy? And they're like, yeah, that's the name, Jim Nagy. And I'll be honest, my first thought was, okay, what are the guys going to say when I tell them that I'm hearing Jim Nagy? Like, how are they going to respond to that? Because there's two ways it could have gone. Like, well, he just runs an all-star game. But then you look into his past, and, George, you start digging into it immediately. Like, you're like, he's got 4 Super Bowl rings, and he's worked in 5 different NFL front offices. Like,
I mean, just the little statement that they put in the press release. For nearly 2 decades prior to this position, Nagy served in various scouting capacities with the Seattle Seahawks, Kansas City Chiefs, New England Patriots, and Washington Redskins. During his 18 years in NFL front offices, his team played in 6 Super Bowls and won 4 Lombardi trophies. That's for the most part, and then combined with what we know on the surface of what he's done with the Senior Bowl, as George kind of outlined, it's a tremendous resume. The guy, he's a football guy. He knows what he's doing when he's putting together a roster.
And I think back to last night and throwing the name out there, and I was like, I'm going to make you guys guess, like, because I wanted to know what names that you thought were even possible for OU, and I kind of gave you some hints, and Eddie was the first one to guess Jim Nagy, and I was not surprised, but I guess I was kind of. It was interesting to me that you guys thought so highly of him right off the bat, because it let me know. I want to know how the fans were going to react. So first I want to know how you were going to react, and you guys reacted overwhelmingly positive.
Well, I think that it's kind of what George has said and what Josh has said, just as far as, I can't sit here and claim to know everything about the Senior Bowl and the way that they go about the process. We apologize for anything we might have said during the Dylan Gabriel not getting an invite a year ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it has
Greg
become something that I think a lot of people pay attention to, especially on the back end of a football season. You still are kind of wanting football, and the Senior Bowl is always there, and it's a good product. Combine that with the Combine this week, and just maybe this is a cop-out, but just the overall attention that Oklahoma will get over the next couple days, it's a massive positive, not to mention that I think he's going to do a really good job with the, just the, I guess, outright connections that he has.
I think that to me is why the hire is so great, is his connections. Like, I think he'll be able to go out and hire some really good people to
I'm
come
super
work
interested
for the university.
in like how this whole thing comes together now with everything that we've reported here since the hire has been made official, in terms of how they structure this front office. Who's going to be in charge of the portal stuff? Who's going to be in charge of high school recruiting? Who's going to be in charge of, outright retention of player? It's going to be fascinating to see how they kind of mold this thing together.
How Jay Valai is going to look at a prospect, and even Ben Arbuckle. I mean, let's look at the Bowe Bentley and Jaden O'Neal stuff. Like, he obviously came in here and had an idea of okay, well, we have this quarterback, but I really like this Bentley guy too. So I want to put out an offer to him, and we'll see how that affects Jaden O'Neal. Like, you gotta, I would think, common sense tells you, and just what we're used to. I mean, what our brains, how they process things. Like, the offensive coordinator generally has to be the guy to pick his quarterback, but he's probably going to have to almost, as they say, bang the table for his guy, because he's probably going to be in a room full of other people with opinions about who the best quarterback is that they should, pull in a class or out of the portal.
Well, guys, and the thing that's, and I think that's really interesting, Carey, because we've never really seen this. Like, I've talked about the Texas Tech model where the quote unquote front office kind of will be in charge of who the offers go out to, and they very are front facing in who they're going to target, who they're going to isolate. But I don't know that I can say I know where the, like what input the coaches have. I don't know what
Brent
those conversations
have the final
look like.
decision, or
does
Nagy
that's
have the
the
final
thing.
decision?
Like, is there going to be like again? I thought the we talked about this back. I think back in the summer, that Giants special that they did, where it basically was the Giants going up to the draft, and you get to see them, the coaches and the front office guys and the scouts, all sitting in that room and discussing, okay, here's what we're looking for, here's what we're prioritizing, and kind of going through that. Is it going to be that, kind of balanced? And if so, guys, I would think what's going to be really interesting is how do coaches respond to this? Do they see that as, hey, I don't have to do all the shit I've been doing, like all the stuff that we're hearing coaches are tired of, and they just don't have enough hours in the day for all the responsibilities, all the portal attention, all this other stuff that they've got to manage. You don't have, if this is done in the way we think it's going to be done, you don't have to do that at Oklahoma anymore. You've got a guy and a staff that is going to take a lot of that off your plate, and you can really coach a lot of football and focus more on that. And I think some coaches are going to struggle giving away some of that power over talent acquisition and who we're going to focus on and those kind of things. But at the same time, you don't have to deal with a lot of the mess that you don't want to deal with.
Well, I think, Josh, that goes to how is your GM hired and who hires it? Like in North Carolina, like Bill Belichick immediately hired his own football GM, the
Michael Lombardi. So it's like, Michael Lombardi, probably the infrastructure there, the hierarchy looks like Bill's on top, like he's the president of operations. Here, it is clearly, Joe Castiglione heads up the athletic department, and then you have a division that is Jim Nagy and all of his people that he's going to hire in his department. And I think it feels like it's more side by side with the football, with the coaching staff, but at the same time. And I thought, George, in the release that Brent kind of insinuated, like, coaches can't do all this stuff that they're being asked to do. So it was almost as if he was saying, yes, I need to have some things taken off of my plate, and he's going to help do that.
I mean, I think that's the whole reasoning behind what the program's trying to do, is to take some of off Brent's plate, because there's just too much going on right now. I mean, we've talked about it. Like, Brent doesn't need to be a part of, not that he doesn't need to be a part, but he doesn't need to be the one negotiating NIL deals, right? Like, I think that his evaluation in seeing, high school players or portal players and identifying talent is super valuable, right? As a head coach, you need that. I still think that Brent will have a lot of, if not the final say in those sort of decisions. But I also think you need somebody like Jim Nagy who can also say, hey, I really like this kid, and I think he's worth this amount of money, right? In terms of what the roster looks like 1 through 85 or 1 through 105 now. So, having that, and also just having some people that can help, these coaches scout players, I think is going to be super valuable. And like I said, they're planning to hire somebody who is very well versed in, writing contracts, putting together evaluations in terms of dollar amounts on players. And I believe this is going to be somebody from the NFL or some sort of agent that has worked on these sort of dealings that's going to be able to come in and do those sort of things and sit in negotiations with parents or agents or whoever and say, here's what your contract looks like. And that, I think, is going to be super valuable. And Jim Nagy, again, I don't know if he's going to be a great GM, but I think he has enough connections to be able to go out and hire somebody more than qualified to do that.
And the other thing that I saw people talking about and asking about on the Crimson Corner, by the way, just $1 to sign up if you want to be a part of the greatest OU community out there, was, scouting and recruiting, and how does that all work now? I think that's something, Josh, that the NCAA, the Big Ten, SEC, whatever this football entity becomes out of all this house settlement stuff, you're going to have to define, what do scouts do? because it has been like you have 11 assistants and you can have so many of them out on the road at one time, and you've got all these restrictions and coaches can't do in-homes. And like, so you have to now figure out, what is the scouting department able to do, from a scouting and an evaluation standpoint, and just even, being able to talk to parents. I think anytime they have something on campus like the barbecue or, Future Freaks, like, everybody, as long as you're coming to campus, anybody on staff can talk to a player and their parents. There's no restrictions there. But when you're away from campus, like, that's what they've got to figure out with how this gets set up with the scouting department.
Yeah, and that's what makes, I think, the entire, skeleton of whatever this front office is going to look like super fascinating to me, because I think that when you're putting it together, the two biggest parts are going to be who handles all your portal stuff and who handles all your high school recruiting, and how you marry that. Because I think that to a certain extent, Josh, they're going to have to make kind of a decision on which way they want to go. If you want to build through high school recruiting, or do you want to rely on the portal and piecing things together that you're not getting done through the high school stuff, if that makes any sense.
And you would think...
And there should be a marriage too, right? Like, between the two.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, I think anybody that's like, we're all this or we're all that, I think you're just foolish. Like, I think you're hurt. I love the basic idea that Dabo believes in. Like, we want to build and we want to develop and all that sort of stuff. But you can't live exclusively there, because you're going to be giving it, Ohio State's, as good as they were, they went and addressed, okay, we've got a need at offensive tackle. They went and got the kid from San Diego State who ended up being a really key player before he got hurt. McLaughlin, the kid, the center from Alabama, really helped them before he got hurt. So, I mean, I don't care how good you are. You can always find guys in the portal that can make you better. So, but what I do think is interesting, and I wonder how much of this is just his background, but with Jim Nagy, like, you feel like he's going to believe in that high school model a lot, just because of it's very similar to the NFL draft model, which he's come from with his scouting background. When he was scouting, he's a regional scout, then he was a national scout, and then at the same time, you have him working at the Senior Bowl for so long. Like, I think you have a lot of marriage of, like, understanding, get these guys early, develop them, and let them be part of what we see our vision as a program as.
I think with this new conference, they need to develop, like what we used to do at Rivals and what Under Armour does. They're going to have some national combines.
Yeah.
I mean, if a conference set that up and it was, some kids wouldn't go. I mean, you wouldn't have reason to, and you'd have a lot more kids show up that you probably weren't even interested in. But if you had all levels and divisions, that's a whole nother show to talk about. There is something that we do need to talk about, and that is how you're feeling, how you're doing, and if your health is something that you feel strongly about, and maybe you're not, maybe you want to feel a lot better. Cody Drug has you covered. It's one of the most popular pharmacies in Texas. Cody Drug is now proudly helping customers right here in Oklahoma. They're licensed to issue you a custom GLP-1 weight loss medication in their state-of-the-art sterile lab. So just go to your physician instead of listing the regular pharmacies. Tell them, hey, you use Cody Drug and you want to get on a weight loss drug, GLP-1 weight loss medication, and they will send it overnight to your house. Kind of like an Amazon for weight loss drugs, and a lot of people out there doing it. Also, not sure what you need? Go to Cody Drug RX, at Cody Drug RX on Instagram. Will, our guy from Cody Drug, Will Douglas, big Sooner fan, big scooper. A lot of different videos and stuff telling you about the different supplements they offer. If you're feeling this way or that way, he can help increase your just your overall health and feelings. So go to CodyDrugRx.com and get started right there. And as I said, the Instagram page at Cody Drug RX, they got over 200,000 Instagram followers. CodyDrugRx.com.
Very good. Let me tell you about Sight. Sight's a big deal, and I think that it was important. Obviously not as much to people like Helen Keller, but let me tell you this. You know who, George? You know who we bet wishes they had better vision?
Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder can see. Unfortunately, that's been a fabrication for a long time. You know who needed vision, foresight, possibly? Could have seen into the future.
Those refs doing the BYU Arizona game last week.
I was thinking more Evan from Oxford, but neither here nor there. It's a new year, Sooner fans, and that means new opportunities to win championships, especially with Jim Nagy. Get back on track, and thanks to Enjoy Vision, you can save $1,000 on LASIK. Glasses and contacts are so last season. It's time to see every play, every highlight, and every win with crystal clear vision. All you got to do is schedule your free consultation today. Go to enjoyvision.com. That is the letter N, Joy, vision.com, and start the new year with a fresh perspective, and also keep $1,000 in your pocket. Ooh. Enjoy Vision. This is where Suitor Scoop LASIKs.
I have something to talk about regarding vision, and I don't need a show of hands, but I'm curious, how many of you guys on this podcast are familiar with the Chip and JoJo program? How many fixer-upper episodes have you guys watched, if any?
The what now?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody's at least seen Fixer-Upper.
Chip and Joanna?
What is the show called? I used to watch
Fixer-Upper.
it. Fixer-Upper, yeah.
Baylor
on
fans.
HGTV?
Yeah, the Baylor fans.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've sat down and watched that.
I think that's like the next step of you becoming an old man
Aaron.
is you watching Fixer-Upper shows.
You're going to start getting into HGTV.
We like the Food Network.
House.
I think that's like that's
George,
the precursor.
That's a gateway.
Yeah,
that's a gateway.
Exactly.
That's how they get you in, and then you'll be watching HGTV before long,
what's
man. It's all happening.
What's their place down in Waco?
Those Silos, Magnolia.
Yes, Magnolia Farms or whatever. You'll be going at some point, George. Believe me.
Like I've you will be. I've thought about this for a long time because, like, I used to watch a lot more of those shows. Like the Backyard one, I always thought was fascinating, where they'd go to Home Depot and just pick some people coming out of like Home Depot, like, hey, do you want a new backyard? Mm-hmm. But it's like when like Chip and Joanna, they take a couple into this house that's like run down and it's got like 70s shag carpet on it, and you can always tell the couple, like Joanna's like, oh, well, if we do this and we move this over here, we can do this with the fireplace and this. Like, she has this vision of what it can be. And I think most people, and I'm the same way, like, I walk into a house like that and I'm like, this is just a shithole. I mean, who's going to live here? Like, why would I want to get this place? You can't see it until she gets on her computer and shows you in 3D, and then you can finally see it and you're like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. I think a lot of things, look at business a lot like that, because you can plan to do things and people are like, that doesn't sound like it's going to work. And then you implement that plan and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. I see what you're saying now. And I think with the whole Curtis Lofton thing, it was like when that happened, everybody was like, oh, this program's screwed. They can't even keep Curtis Lofton around. He was a great GM. And nobody knew if he was a great GM. I mean, just because he was a former player, and nothing against Curtis. I mean, I'll always consider him a friend. He wanted to do other stuff with his life, but you look at the jump from like going from Curtis Lofton in that position and what it entailed and who, the type of talent that was in that position and the experience, to now Jim Nagy. Like, it's this whole football program, this athletic department has taken a huge leap forward. And I think people were so critical about, well, why didn't they want Curtis? Why didn't they keep Curtis? This is why. It's because they had a grander vision for what this needed to be and what that general manager role entailed. And, it's kind of one of those things, hey, Joe Castiglione, take your victory lap. I mean, Woody Glass, take your victory lap. All you guys that, work to make this thing better, it's gotten better a lot faster. So.
Randall Stevenson,
too, yeah.
Behind the scenes, Randall Stevenson has been a major part of what they've been doing. And one of the things in the release...
And even the Rosenberg firm.
Yeah, Rosenberg was in on this. But, Stevenson in the release, I think it was kind of talked about a little bit about, like, his role moving forward as, I don't know, special advisor to Joe Castiglione, football chair. Like, he's going to have a lot of say moving forward in terms of how the money works and the revenue sharing stuff, which, that was kind of somewhat news today too. I don't know if you guys saw Georgia released how they plan to...
They're $20.5 million allocated.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that not only Oklahoma, but many of the SEC schools will replicate what Georgia is doing. Like, it's kind of the SEC has kind of worked together, most of the schools, to have something very similar to what Georgia put out today, which is, kind of interesting in terms of how they're breaking up the revenue sharing.
Per the release, Randall Stevenson's official title is Chair of Football and Special Advisor to the President and the Director of Athletics. It's a mouthful.
He's Elon.
I hope not, but neither here nor there.
So yeah, I mean, this is a total new era, moving in a completely professionalized direction. Now, we've talked plenty about the House versus NCAA settlement and the things. Oregon did some really interesting things as a state legislature that boggles the mind about how they keep going against this and making it harder. So, but it really is amazing to think about how quickly this all has happened. How much did you guys see the Texas Tech facilities tour that they put out?
Insane.
Just incredible.
It's incredible to me, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Tech, because obviously the money situation is taken care of with the Double Eagle guys. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens moving forward if they're able to kind of get over that hump. And I think that they're kind of, what did you say, Josh, that they're in like the same boat as Missouri and an Ole Miss of the world, that it feels like everything's in place from a financial, monetary standpoint. Can they capitalize on it on the field? And they were close last year, a game away from playing in the Big 12 championship. But at the same time, they're going to need to get over that hump if they want to get, I guess, in a certain sense, I don't know, an actual return on investment, but a return on investment in terms of wins.
Well, here's why I brought up that video real quick. I'm sorry. I went out of the hallway to help a guy.
Cutting off, no problem.
But I wanted to get to the original point that I was trying to make there, which is I watched that video and they had all that stuff in there, and float pods and gaming pods and a lot of the same stuff you see at OU in the south end zone, but it's just a lot bigger. The one thing I didn't notice is where's the GM's office? Where's the assistant GM? Like, they designed and built all that stuff before NIL and this new system really came into effect. So it's like, in some ways, yes, they're bragging about that being the nicest football facility in America, but it's also already outdated a little bit.
How?
It's not built to function, to have a functioning.
I think that they'll be able to function
front office
with a regular
in the middle
office. I don't think they need to show the office. Do you?
Well, you have a football facility. You want to have your entire football staff in the
I don't think
thing.
any of this matters.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just saying, this is how fast this shit has moved, you dumbasses. From the time they could construct a whole new facility, the whole
they might have, and they just didn't put it in the
of
video.
a football program has changed.
They might. I'm saying they might have. I don't think that they'd put it in a video about their facility.
I'm sure they have an office for their GM.
And if not, they'll just build a brand new building.
General manager for a while. Blanchard has been right-hand guy for Joey for a while, since Joey got there. That was one of Joey's first hires. So I would be real surprised if he didn't have some space allocated.
But is he more of a, was he the guy that, I think Notre Dame came after they lost their guy? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
So he's well respected.
Yeah.
He's not just a glorified, recruiting director.
Yeah, and Eddie and I talked about it. A guy that was an OU recruit, where it was the guy we thought might take over when he was going to go, when that was kind of the belief as he was going to go. So, he's well respected. Again, there's something carved out for him there. I'd be real surprised if that wasn't the case.
But that's one guy. How big do we think
sure.
this is going to get? 15 people are going to be in a front office? 10, 5?
I don't think it's going to be 15.
I would say 5.
Yeah, and I think there's,
but I don't know how many people are in a regular NFL front office. I think there's probably
a lot more than that.
15. I think you're talking about 15 plus in that regard.
Yeah.
But I think that there's even one thing that should be somebody like Drew Hill. I don't think is leaving the staff. I think he will be a part of this. Yeah, he'll be a part of this front office staff in terms of, because he's been a huge asset in terms of recruiting and evaluating talent. Somebody like that will probably be a part of this front office vision.
There are as a part of the executive administration for the Philadelphia Eagles, we'll use them as an example. including Jeffrey Lurie, who's the chief executive officer, the chairman. There's 8 other people on the executive administration, and then you start working through like executive administration support, football operations. I bet there's damn near
and scouts. That doesn't even include
and
scouts.
I bet there's 50 people.
Yeah,
more than 50.
Which for the most part, scouts they don't work in the facility, right? They're usually,
a lot of times they're all over the country.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they have it labeled like Southwest, Southeast, National, Midwest, so on and so on.
To set that conversation, you've almost got to figure out what we were talking about earlier. What is it going to look like? Can scouts get out on the road in the coming years? And then you do have to have a legitimate scouting department rather than kind of a data gathering type of apparatus.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Josh, do you think that, like, I guess the way that you mentioned that, it just made me think, like, will we live in a world in the next 5 years where, the Midwest scouting director is at a Derby high school football game on a Friday night, like literally scouting the player?
I think that's all coming. Like I just do, and I think it's I know people be like, oh, it's changed, it's NFL and blah blah blah. It's going to help keep coaches in college football because guys, I mean, they're the only thing keeping so many of them there right now is that they don't have the opportunities to move to the NFL, and there are some that do. We know. At various times last few years, Bill has been pursued by some NFL teams. So, like, there has been some of that stuff going on. But a lot of these guys just don't have the opportunity, and so they stay in college. But when they're just having to work more. Guys, I mean, like, right now, the NFL guys, they're not doing anything. Like, well, okay, this week they're in Indianapolis at the Combine, and then they'll have a couple weeks off before OTAs. And, like, there's just a lot of – there's a big window where these guys can actually catch their breath. Where in college, the second you're done recruiting, you're into the portal. And as soon as portal's done, you're getting ready for spring ball. Like, there's just no window for these guys to ever have a life. And even though the pay is great, that wears a lot of these guys just down.
One thing we do know is that there will be an assistant general manager. I mean, with Pete Nakos' article, was there anything else? I didn't have a chance to read everything that he said in his with the structure or his staff and things like that.
No, not really. I think it's everything that we've kind of talked about, just as far as like there will be an assistant general manager. There will be an assistant, general manager that's in charge of the portal, that's in charge of high school recruiting, things like that.
And I will say this: I mean, Brent and his staff, they were at the Senior Bowl. They were hanging out there during the week.
Yeah, they put out that picture with Brent and
Billy Bowman.
Brandon Hall with Billy Bowman.
Yeah.
I remember.
And from what I was told talking to people last night, like, this is a really good marriage between those two. Like, they feel like, people I talk to feel like that they're going to work together really well. So all that stuff we were talking about, do coaches want to do this? Who's in charge of it? I think that'll all work itself out, and I don't think there'll be any issue. And I think they're both good enough talent evaluators. They're probably going to see eye to eye on most things.
I'm also really interested from Jim Nagy's perspective, and I hope we get to talk to him, in some sort of press conference style, which I bet we do. But does he view this as like a long-term gig? He interviewed for the Jets GM job, and I do think he wants to be an NFL GM someday. So I wonder, and especially in college athletics, if programs will be hiring GMs, after several years. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Jim Nagy was here for just the next 3 to 4 years, and then OU's doing another search.
It really is going to depend on how quickly OU rises. I mean, before he could be. I mean,
look, if they go and win a lot of games next year, and then they win games that and they're competing for the SEC championship or whatever in the next few years. NFL teams are going to come after them.
It's kind
big
of like
college programs.
It's like what we've talked about with assistant coaches. Like, yeah, it sucks when you lose an offensive coordinator, like whoever, like a Jeff Levy or somebody. It's a good problem to have because you're doing something right.
But I will say, I mean, he's going to be well compensated. I tweeted it out, but he's going to make close to 7 figures. And I would assume if they, start winning everything, that number's going to go up. So I would bet he is one of the highest paid GMs in college football.
One of the things that Nakos did put in is that Nagy will report to Stevenson.
Yeah.
And we kind of already talked about that. But he also listed that, where was it? Michael Lombardi, he's making $1.5 million. That's probably on the high side to get him to go do something like that.
That's very high.
But he'll be paid, I would imagine, quite well for what these general managers are making.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, and that's one of the discussions that we have on the corner all the time is what happens to coaching salaries, and I don't see them going down. I mean, certainly, you've seen some extensions this offseason. Who was it? Heupel, maybe? Did you get an extension? There's somebody that got a pretty sizable extension.
Luke Fickell got an extension.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising.
There's someone else. I don't know, but to your point about staff numbers, I think they're going to continue to go up, and it just shows that OU's spending a lot of money right now. I mean, Nagy obviously wasn't cheap, and neither are any of these extra personnel people that they're going to hire. Those hires are not going to be cheap because you're probably luring them away from NFL jobs.
Yeah, Heupel got extended in January till 2029, and he was bumped up to $9 million a year. And I think we all know Tennessee is one of those places that spends as much NIL money as anybody.
Well, and speaking of money, a family just donated $885,000 to OU football in the Inspiring Champions Fund.
Damn.
That would have been sweet if it was
the Sanner family.
$85 million.
Shout out the Sanner family.
So that is Jim Nagy's salary.
Sanner?
Could be, yeah.
Well, yeah. What family was it again?
Sanner family.
Saner?
NNER.
Okay. Well, hey, congrats to everybody.
Sooner Scoop will match.
No. Sooner Scoop can't match is what you meant to say. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a big, I think the one thing to say is this is a very good thing. It's happened today in hiring Jim Nagy. And it's incredible because you said, Eddie, I know I saw you on the message board. You said, I don't know what message board this is, but I don't think it's Sooner Scoop because it was all positive.
Yes, to get this big of a, oh, wow, okay, they did something. I think it's just a positive for a fan base that's been obviously beaten down. And I think that, I'm not going to base everything off of what other people say because they're friends with the guy. But when you just scroll through Twitter and you see Tom Pelissero, Cole Kublik, Max Olson, Adam Schefter, every NFL/college football guy that you could think of say, wow, what a hire. They've done something good.
And I think that's the other thing about Jim Nagy that really stood out to me is in his role with the Senior Bowl, he follows all of us. He's very media savvy. He understands. He gets it. He is someone that is a relationship builder.
And that's what I was saying earlier. I think that I'm sure he's a great evaluator of talent and can recruit and all those things based on his background. But when you talk about somebody being the face of, hey, we need your money to build a good football roster, I think that he will be pretty good at that in marketing the program.
Yeah, and time will tell. It's still just because of this hire today and the structure and everything that's going to be moving forward here over the next couple of years with OU football. You can separate that and say that's a great hire, but also acknowledge that 2025 is still a massive season for everybody involved.
And we talked before we got on here, let's say next year is a disaster and they don't, you have to fire Brent Venables. I would guess Jim Nagy would have a huge say, if not the most say, in who the next head coach is at OU.
Sure.
I think he would be a major part of that decision.
I mean, just think of the NFL, and I think that this is the way we're going to have to think moving forward. I mean, how many times do you see a head coach get let go and the general manager stays on? I mean, I don't think that he would be let go after one season. He's going to be here for the long haul or whatever that may be.
Well, look, and here's the other thing, and I've been talking to people on the boards about this week. We are still in that era where money solves all problems, and there are no guardrails. And I mentioned the Oregon thing earlier. The SEC, the Big Ten, maybe they form their own super league with the ACC and the Big 12. That's floating around there now. But eventually, this is all going to stabilize, and you're going to have some structure. You're going to have some rules. And, like, these are the things that Joe Castiglione's been working on, and Randall Stevenson as well, since he came in here. And it's, finding the infrastructure, building it, having a foundation to move forward in this new era of football. Because, as we said before, just having money eventually is not going to do it for you. You're going to have to evaluate and find people in the portal, find those hidden gems, be able to get key pieces of your roster that you're not paying through the roof for. I mean, you're never going to – I don't know if you'll ever have a salary cap. I mean, collective bargaining has to happen and all that stuff. And I don't know where this is all going to end up, but you can't say it's a mistake to try and build what they're trying to build right now. You can't just sit there and say, spend all day screaming, we're poor. Why don't we have more money? Why don't you raise more? Blaming people for not having more money is never going to fix Oklahoma football, and it's never going to prepare you for the future. So this is the road it's going down to, and everybody needs to realize that. And the better you do it now, the better you set it up now, the better you're going to be in the future faster.
And I think, too, we've talked a lot about, like, fans have been frustrated with, what's the vision? What's the plan? Like, how are they going to fix this thing? And, I think a lot of people thought maybe they were just sitting on their hands when it came to the GM search. And clearly now looking at it, if Jim Nagy was always the top target, there's a reason why it maybe took a little bit longer than they may have liked, because he had the Senior Bowl and he's at the Combine right now and all of that.
I was told this first started early December. 1st of December is when Nagy and OU first started contacting each other.
Right, and then I'm sure he was like, I got to get through the Senior Bowl and all of that stuff. So, but I think now you are starting to actually see, not that, I mean, OU's, Joe C. and Brent and all of them have told us this is what they're going to do for months. We just haven't seen it really come to fruition yet. And now this feels kind of like that first domino of like, okay, this is the plan. Like, they have a vision. We'll see if it works, but they're swinging for the fences and they hit one out. Like, this is seems like a great hire on paper. So I think that's good for the fan base. And that to me is like kind of the bigger picture, is the optics on this are just fantastic for OU. I mean, like Eddie said, the national attention this is getting is exactly what OU needed.
Yeah. Porter.
Well, because they could have made a great hire, maybe even a hire that would, like maybe 5 years from now, he'd look back and say, well, that was the right hire. But because of his notoriety and how visible he is, it's just a huge bounce for Oklahoma. They get into, there's probably not someone, a high school football player, a college football player, that won't see some reference to this over the next couple of days, just because of how many people this connects to. And, I mean, guys, he's going to be on
NFL Network
on some of this Combine coverage. Yeah. He's going to be front and center on a lot of stuff that a lot of football people will be watching.
When's the last time that OU was in the news, OU football was in the news for an entire day and it was a good thing? And it was like the top news in college football that day.
I think Texas
or
2 years
maybe
ago.
the day that Mateer.
Yeah, Mateer.
I think that
there's been some positive
one.
But you know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
Guy. That was the
I know what you mean though, George. It feels like it's been a long time since it was. This is great news, but here's something else that also sucks.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I would say it's the Texas game. That's probably the last time, in my opinion. Because Mateer, even people were like, well, there's always but.
Sure.
With this, I don't know what your but is.
It's just and like George said, kind of in the open, I think it's just a reminder that there still is a little bit of respect out there, even though we've been in this bubble for so long, that Oklahoma football is still a nationally good program with good standing with a lot of people. And for Jim Nagy to want to sign up to join a part of this, it's a positive. And we'll see how it all goes. But for right now, it seems like this is it's a monumental hire just in terms of an athletic department that recognized this is a massive hire and they need to go out and do something big. And they took a big swing and they got it.
Yeah. And, we'll see how the dominoes fall the rest of the way with the other hirings and personnel staff. And certainly, if we hear, you guys will hear. Now we we'll move on to what this means for the portal in the upcoming spring. And like you said, George, if you have a press conference with Jim Nagy, that would help.
Spring football starts a week from Thursday.
Oh my,
it's crazy.
We were playing in the spring preview show in the office yesterday, so for YouTube, and we'll have a YouTube discussion about Jim Nagy as well. But we can kind of move on to some other things. You talk about good news all in one day. What would it be like to finish off this day with a win over Kentucky in the LNC?
I told Eddie we might have to cause some, I don't know, negativity or something. If OU basketball wins tonight, there'll be too much positive momentum with OU athletics.
When we showed up on Monday, I told George, and this is coming out of a weekend that the softball team swept, the gymnastics team won on Friday night. Baseball team obviously had a monumental weekend. We get to them here in a little bit. Even the basketball teams won. Jenny and crew won by 40 on Sunday in Fayetteville. OU held on against Mississippi State. It was like, I don't know what to do right now with all of the positivity. But yeah, it would be monumental. I think that like with the win on Saturday against Mississippi State, it opened that door a little bit more into an idea that maybe you could put something together here over the last couple games and find yourself as an at-large in the NCAA tournament. And a Kentucky team that obviously has been pretty good under Mark Pope this year. Otega Owe, it's kind of hard to believe that this is Kentucky's first trip to Norman ever. So they have a great opportunity, but how many times have we been in this spot where we go, yeah, they got a great opportunity, but can they actually get it done? And I think it would go a long ways if they could win tonight and set themselves up for the final 3 games of the regular season. So we'll see. I think there's the big thing tonight is going to be paying attention to see what this final availability report is with Lamont Butler, who obviously helped San Diego State get to the Final Four, get to the national championship game a year ago, and then also Jackson Robinson, who's obviously from Ada, went to A&M, went to Arkansas, ended up at Kentucky. He hasn't played in like a month, and for as much good mojo as there is out there, what a shit luck it would be if all of a sudden he comes back for this game. Kentucky does play Auburn on Saturday, so the way that Mark Pope had kind of talked about it after the loss in Tuscaloosa on Saturday, it didn't seem like either of those guys were going to play, and then all of a sudden they're on the availability report as probable on Tuesday night. So big game. We'll see. Otega Owe has been awesome for Kentucky. He's coming off his worst game in a Kentucky uniform with 2 points in Tuscaloosa.
If they win, are they in?
Tonight?
Think? Yeah.
I don't think that you can just say, oh, you could go lose the last 3 games and they're in. But I think that, as of this morning, they've moved into the first 4 byes, which that doesn't even put I guess technically you would be 6 to 8 teams away from like bubble. So it helps. It helps that they.
What if they win? If they win just 2 of these last 4 games, they in?
Depending on how everything else goes out there, I think that they would have a pretty good record.
We are all so scarred because you're like, you don't want to say they're in, because last year it was hard. Last year it was like they're in, no question.
It helped on Monday night that Michigan went and beat Nebraska because Nebraska is going to be one of those teams that's on the bubble. Then it kind of took a step back when Georgia beats Florida last night in the manner that they did and holding on after leading by 26 at one point. So I think that they would. I think the one thing that you can bank on right now is they have 5 quad 1 wins. If you could get 2 more and get to 7, that's a pretty good resume, all things considered. And I do think that they're going to get a little bit of help in terms of the overall strength of the conference and having to play some of these teams that have been in the top 5 for basically the entirety of the season. So, we've talked about it, but it comes down to what does Jeremiah Fears give you tonight? He gave you 27, 10 assists, which was a career high on Saturday, and 5 rebounds. I think that, as beaten down as this program has been, and I was talking about just completely moving on from Porter Moser. The way that they battled and kind of dug deep to win on Saturday, if nothing else, you have to respect the fight. And somebody like a Duke Miles diving on the floor and losing a pair of teeth, it's at least respectable. And I think that that's kind of what everybody's been looking for, is just having that type of fight that they didn't have when they went to Auburn or Gainesville or Tuscaloosa or Tennessee here in Norman. They put themselves in this spot, but maybe they can dig out of it. And, you have to be a real miserable person if you're cheering against Oklahoma to make the NCAA tournament. They need to get that done.
What was the last game we decided was the break your heart game?
The last time that
they
just broke like OU?
Like when OU fans were like, we're going to go support this team. And they went in and they got crapped on.
Yeah, this year probably Texas. I didn't think the crowd was terrible against A&M. They kind of blew that one. And then, Bob wrote the story about the top 10 most heartbreaking losses that Moser's had, and there's been plenty to choose from over the last 3 years plus this season.
They can't come out flat tonight.
Well, it's inexcusable if
they
you
do
come
that
out
a lot.
Flat. It's inexcusable if you come out flat against it.
Especially 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night if you get a good crowd.
Everybody knows that this is a massive game. You can't run from the idea that this is a massive, or it's not a massive game. For them to come out lackadaisical, I'll be right back to just clean house, because that's unacceptable to a certain extent.
But okay, but how do we go back and forth?
Because
if
we
it's
can't.
time to clean house, it's time to clean house.
We've got Josh talking about basketball.
I think the benchmark has always been get to the NCAA tournament this year, and if they're able to get in, you can easily talk about having a 6'10" guy that's coming in next year. There's a guy in the front court that will be able to help you immediately. You can talk about, okay, maybe Jeremiah Fears is developing. You also remember, when we're talking about Fears, he's 18 years old. He's playing against guys that are literally, in some cases, like Auburn, 6-7 years older than him. That's crazy.
I think it's fair. I think with this team, it's fair to kind of, I don't know if flip-flop's the right word, but, when they went through that 5-game losing streak, I think we were all on the same page. They got to make a change.
It wasn't even being competitive.
When they go and they beat a good Mississippi State team at home, and you've seen them play good basketball earlier in the season, you say, okay, well, if they can somehow salvage this season and win a couple of these last 4 games and get into the NCAA tournament and maybe win a game or even lose, it doesn't matter. If they get in, I think you can buy yourself back in. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence. I still it was just one game on Saturday.
Josh, I don't think it's crazy. That's going to be the conversation whenever we get to that point, whether it be in a week and a half when the season's over and they're headed to Nashville for the SEC tournament, or whatever they get into the NCAA tournament, and maybe you can win a game and really salvage some stuff. So I don't know. It's tough, and I think that the one thing that you, I guess, can find some happiness or positivity in is the fact that as of right now, they're in. They just have to be able to finish some of these games. And I don't know. We'll see. It's a big we'll see. By the way, the Duke Miles thing with his teeth, supposedly that happened last year. And the reason that it looked like it did with and I guess maybe from a pain standpoint too, with the nerves, they were already fake teeth. So hopefully, he was able to get that thing fixed. I
wish I would have known that while I was dry heaving in my living room watching them show close-ups of the
so
picking
painful.
Up the teeth.
Mike Houck told us that yesterday, just for a little bit of context in terms of everything that happened. I do think he is going to wear some type of face guard or face mask,
or maybe a mouthpiece or something.
Or maybe, I really don't know. I don't know.
It's crazy.
It was nuts.
I had a buddy do that in the snow one time.
Ugh.
Literally ate it so hard he lost his 2 front teeth.
What is that movie?
It was in Norman. Yeah, not good.
Was that movie American History X where they put the guy's
the
teeth?
The curb stomp. Oh.
That's what
just sends
gives
shivers
me the
down my
shivers.
spine.
It's like one of those things. If I'm ever flipping through channels and something, and it's not a rewatchable movie as it is, but if I ever saw that scene, I would immediately run out of the room.
Edward Norton.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah, that's a movie thing, and you got it.
I got it.
I'm impressed.
I will also say, too, I thought it was really cool that Dayton Forsythe, the entire team, went to go see his jersey get retired on Friday night in Dale. Dayton obviously has been a nice, I guess, bright spot in what has been a little bit of a miserable road here over the last month. But he started to play well, and I think that from a future standpoint, you can build around somebody like a Dayton Forsythe moving forward. I think Jeremiah Fears probably headed to the NBA. We probably don't realize how good of a game he had on Saturday. Fears, just in terms of historical context, I think it was the first time somebody had 27, 10, and 5 in a game since Trae Young, going back to 96, 97. he was dominant, and I think that he could have had more than 10 assists if they would have made a couple more buckets. So I don't know. It's a big question mark. I really don't know what to expect tonight. We'll see. I do think it's interesting that the line's only 2.5. Usually that means that they are getting a little bit of money from some sharps on Oklahoma. So we'll see. And if Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler are able to play, does that change the line? Does that move anything? I guess we'll have to see here over the next couple hours before that comes out at, I think, 5:30 today.
All right. More to come. Hopefully we continue to see some wins in the basketball.
Seeing
arena
plenty of wins across the hallway. Jenny Baranczyk and crew, they're playing really, really well right now. I know that we talked about it on the Hoops Report.
Limiting the turnovers.
But they're doing what they're supposed to do. Beat up on bad teams.
Hoops Report up, still fresh on the YouTube channel. So make sure you go. It was really good hoops. I think the best Hoops Report we've had in a long time this week. So go check that out with Bob Prisbillo and Eddie, and of course George talking the women. So I got to tell you, Josh, one of the most stressful things that I've done in a long time was go down your Jaden O'Neal explanation for the drop from On 3, and just to see our subscribers just going all in on On 3 national people. On 3 input on Jaden O'Neal is the title of it. Cody Belair jumped in there and started, not defending himself, but trying to help give reasons. It did not go well. Not one of our prouder moments, seeing some of the vitriol thrown his way. But I could not finish it. I was like, this is tough to read. This is tough to see people going after people like this.
See, and that's me in my element. Like, I just got in there and got amongst them. Like, that is me at home. And I thought, to Cody's credit, like I said, I asked him about it. He gave me more detail than I expected. I kind of thought he'd give me, a couple sentences. For those who haven't read it, go check it out in the corner. He gave a good lengthy answer kind of for what On 3's thinking was behind Jaden O'Neal's drop. And I want to be clear. I don't necessarily agree with all of it. But at the same time, I know, like, Cody saw him a couple of times. Like, he had a reason to think what he thought. And I know people like, well, they're making too much out of this 7-on-7 event. And Cody talked about it we've talked about this forever. Like, NFL teams don't go to the combine and then make up their mind about a player on the combine. If they see something interesting, they come back and say, okay, now we got to look at this. This guy was better than we thought. He was worse than we thought on tape, whatever it is. And that becomes a bigger piece of their whole evaluation. So,
but he did say,
what
he did say that I thought was interesting is, okay, so after that Battle of Miami day 2 or day 1 when he was so bad, they went back and looked some of his high school tape and they noticed some of the same issues that he had that day in some of his high school games, which is basically just overall not the most accurate passer.
Yeah, and again, and guys, I mean, we all saw him this summer. He is a big, long-armed guy. Like, that's going to be something that I think tends to develop a little later in guys. That's why I'm not too hung up on it with Jaden, because I think he is pretty naturally gifted. But when you have that big, long arm and big, long release, it's harder to get that to be repeated over and over and over again to where you are hitting, you're hitting the slants right where you want to. You're hitting the little 10-yard out. Like, all that stuff, it takes a little longer to wind up and gear up as to where, and again, just for the sake of comparison, you've got Bowe Bentley at about 6 foot, 6'1", and 190 pounds. There's not nearly as much movement happening. Like, it's just boom and the ball's gone. So I think there is
the beauty pageant.
It's somewhat understandable. What now?
O'Neal wins the beauty pageant between those two easily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, I've stood next to both of them. Jaden O'Neal is a prototypical-looking NFL quarterback. Like that, there's no question about it. And, again, I don't want that to be, down on Bowe Bentley. I think he is a near-ideal fit for what we think Ben Arbuckle's going to want to do with this offense. So he makes all the sense in the world. The thing that I think OU fans get lost on, this is a good problem. I don't care which one of them you get. You're getting a good quarterback, and I think Oklahoma is going to get one of them. I don't know which one it's going to be. I think that's kind of impossible to know. Like, we've got to watch it play out a little bit. I think there are outside factors that are all going to play a role here. But I think Oklahoma's going to get one of them and should be very happy with either one.
By the way, I was at his throwing session, and I'm not saying it was his fault because it was. We talked about it after it was over. Quality receivers weren't all that well, all that good. Jaden O'Neal did not complete a whole lot of passes during his throwing sessions at OU summer camp that I remember. Outside,
I don't know. I feel like I remember him being pretty impressive that day.
Yeah, he was.
I thought he was like overthrowing a lot of people.
Now that could have been.
He definitely was. It was either him or the what was the kid's name?
Some kids in the hands.
What was the kid's? What was the kid's name that
from Arizona that committed to Clemson?
Yeah, him and that kid.
They were the two most impressive.
Who was it, Josh?
Tate Reynolds is his name.
Yeah, Tate Reynolds and Jaden O'Neal were by far the two best that we saw all summer.
That's one of those things that's just so tough to go in there and say, okay, this guy tore it up because you can throw a great ball,
thrown to those receivers before.
Right? You don't know how their acceleration. You don't know how far to leave it out for them. It's just so tough.
It was attempted a poor joke. I'll say that.
And one rep, they could be going against Malik Hawkins and Tristan Haynes, who are going to go play football at Oklahoma. And the next rep, it's some little kid from Sulphur that is just glad to be there, kind of thing. So that matters too.
We love the people in Sulphur, by the way.
Absolutely. Josh. I don't know how you live there. I think you're very brave souls, but that is. It's the smell, guys. Couldn't do the smell. I got no problem with the town itself. I remember driving through there, like going to Falls Creek when I was a kid, and was like, "How do you live here all the time like this?" I couldn't do it. So much love to Sulphur.
Was Hammond from Sulphur?
Nate Hammond?
Yeah. No.
He was from Moore.
No. Josh Heupel's bud.
Chris
Hammond.
Chris Hammond. I don't remember if he was from Sulphur or not.
Sound right.
Speaking of Josh,
the guy that was on
Chris
Survivor
Hammonds,
and stuff, right?
The guy that wore a Tennessee shirt to the
game.
Speaking of Josh Heupel, he just hired Seth Luttrell.
Yeah, I know.
And I guess the more I read about it, it sounds like he's just going to be an analyst. Is that basically what it comes down to?
Yep.
It would be kind of interesting to see him and Andrew Jones on the other sideline when we head over to Knoxville this next season.
Chris Hammonds is indeed from Sulphur.
Terry, you were right.
Yes.
Yep, you were. Credit to you. Well done.
Even though he's a traitor to his people now, apparently. He got a lot of crap for that. He said it was for
Hype's mom.
just
gone with he was supporting his guy.
Yeah, well, I don't. Josh's mom had passed away recently, and I think they're the two closest guys from that team. I think they're like best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so Future Freaks coming up. On the 8th. Mm-hmm. Where are we now with that, and where will we be next week? Like just in terms of visit list and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're at like I said, I need to sit here down and do a count, but I would say about 25 to 30 guys I've got confirmed right now, all the way from 2026 guys, including Bowe Bentley. All the way down to some 2028 guys, including one that's got an offer, the Michael Rhodes kid from Klein Oak, the same school that produced Cortland Guillory in last year's class. So a lot of activity. Peyton Houston should be there. I'm very interested to see if like a guy like Graydon Howell from Broken Bow, if he picks up an offer while he's on campus. He's absolutely electric on tape, and you kind of wonder if maybe something could come together there. But it should be another really good list. I will say the newest one I've confirmed is, it was in today's Woke, is Brian Harris, the big defensive lineman from Florida, was committed to Maryland, backed off of that about 10 days ago, and has since, Penn State's offered him, Oklahoma's offered him, but Oklahoma offered him, I want to say Thursday, maybe not even that recent, maybe Monday. It's only been less than a week, I'm sure of, but they've already set up an official, not an official visit, but an unofficial visit. He and his father are coming up, so I think that's a really good sign, and that's what surprises me about Future Freaks is the 26 group is strong. You got Bowe Bentley, Craig Dandridge, Vincent Johnson, June Rorden, We talked about it on the recruiting report. Tavian Branch. I mentioned Brian Harris. Jamion Winfield's a guy that I love. Really interesting guy out of the DFW area that has really seen his stock go up. I think he was in the top 75 and On3's new updated ranking. So really athletic defensive lineman. And then Brandon Arrington, like I said, the corner from California that's a 5-star type guy. You get a couple of those guys and you've had a successful weekend even 6 months from now.
Josh, somebody that I think we had talked about coming out of the Navy All-American Bowl, but you hit on it and woke. I believe Steve Wiltfong had a write-up on him as well. He's announced his official visit list. Jordan Clay out of San Antonio, 6'3" wide receiver, another maybe name to keep an eye on there in the 2026 group.
Yeah. And is a guy, like you said, will be there June 20th is when he has set up his official visit. And I talked to some people this morning because I saw him in San Antonio, and at that point, Oklahoma was very peripheral to his recruitment. There just wasn't a lot happening from what I could gather. But it sounds like they've really made some progress, and I get the impression this is a guy that's kind of moving to the front of the line for Oklahoma, and OU fans would love this guy. I mean, he is legit 6'3", 190. He's really well put together out of San Antonio Madison. For those who remember way back, same program that Jacob Gutierrez came out of years and years ago. So just a big, strong, physical receiver, really strong with his hands. Impressed me when I watched him at the Navy All-American Bowl. He was, again, another one of those juniors that got to take part in the game. But yeah, like I said, one of those kind of like a I mean, I made the comparison to like a Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, I don't know that he's that good, but like that kind of player where like he's going to play at 210, 215 probably in college and probably just physically overwhelm a lot of corners.
It's crazy to look at the woke today, and you talked about, I don't think we mentioned him yet, but Braxton Lindsey's talking about developing a relationship with Coach Goodwin as well as Nate Dreiling. And I saw Nate Dreiling's name, and it took me back for a second. It feels like that was years ago, and in reality, it was only a couple weeks ago.
He has really, and I remember when Allie took over last year, it felt like it took not like long, but it took a little while. From the day that Nate Dreiling was announced, I mean, like you feel like almost every day I'm talking to a linebacker that's heard from him or had a relationship with him or, is working with he and Wes Goodwin. So there's a lot there that I think is going well for them. Now, this is Braxton Lindsey's kind of a unique situation where being a kid from Arkansas, Nate Dreiling had spent, a few months there at Arkansas State and was recruiting him in that direction. So there was already kind of a existing relationship. But the thing that I had not really paid enough attention to, guys, is, I kept looking at the On3 page for Braxton, and you're like, okay, that's a solid offer list. Braxton hits me up literally this morning and was like, hey, man, could you update my offer list? And I'm like, well, sure. So I get to looking at it. Well, we didn't have Arkansas, Baylor, TCU, BYU, Stanford. Like he had probably Oklahoma State, West Virginia. He probably had half a dozen P5 offers that we just weren't aware of, or because they had happened before the OU offer, and the kid wasn't really on my radar at that point. So this is a guy that I think OU fans may be taking a little lightly, but I get the impression Oklahoma is very high on him as kind of a jack of all trades at linebacker. He's a guy that could line up, rush off the edge. He could play off ball. There's a lot of variety, and I kind of joked with him about Dreiling and Goodwin kind of fighting over whose room he might end up in.
It's going to be interesting because we'll get to see some of these guys hopefully out on the field, coaching here in a couple of weeks. But should say that spring practice is a little more than a week away. We'll have some media stuff next week. We don't know the extent of it, but get to talk to guys like John Mateer, I think, for the first time. Should be really interesting, as well as these new receivers and tight ends that we don't know a whole lot about because they're from lower divisions. But Josh will get more into that and kind of doing some spring preview stuff and things like that. But, I mean, let's face it, getting to see Ben Arbuckle's offense probably the number one thing on most people's lists.
Yeah, just overall going into the spring. I do think it's going to be, I guess, somewhat interesting just to see. And George, you kind of talked about it when we were talking about what we want to get into and some of the preview stuff for YouTube, just in terms of, like, how does a Michael Fasusi or a Ryan Foje, how are they going to figure into the offensive line next year? How does a Marvin Jones Jr. look out there with the defense?
Yeah.
Kendall Daniels.
Sure, yeah. I think all of the newcomers are super, super fascinating. And then obviously we're going to be talking to a bunch of guys that have played a lot of football down there. And George, you wrote the article yesterday just in terms of production that's returning on the surface. The numbers, they look good. But what does that actually mean when you get down to it? They're returning 79% of the offensive production from a year ago. But I was reminded this morning of a Billy Tubbs quote and saying, hey, you returned all 5 starters. He's like, I need 5 new guys. That's not a good thing that I'm returning all these guys. So it's going to be kind of fun to see how it all kind of marries together.
And that production number is a little misleading. Like, I think Bill Connelly does a really good job with the SP Plus stuff that he puts out. And even the returning production stuff is interesting to a degree. But the way he does the math on it, he factors in transfers. So, like, John Mateer tips the scales a lot in OU's favor. You have 4 offensive linemen returning that had over 200 snaps a year ago. That's great. You're also adding 2 guys from the transfer portal with over 200 snaps from other schools, and that factors in. And so that's why that returning production number is so high. But you also look at, last year, of the top 25 teams with the highest returning production in college football a year ago, using the same statistics, only one of those teams made the college football playoffs. So I don't think that returning production means that OU is going to have success. I think that it's a good thing in a lot of ways that you have a bunch of guys that have played a lot of football, especially on the defensive side, that know the system and can continue that success. But on the offensive side, I think the number is a little misleading. I'm really interested to see how the offensive line shakes out in the spring. Not that we're going to walk out of there and say, oh, this is their starting 5, but who's going to emerge? Like, Logan Howland's probably not going to go through the spring. So who's playing at left tackle? Like, Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor, are they healthy? And then the new guys, like, where do they fit in? But
and Fabeche Nwiwu versus Eddie Pierre-Louis.
Yeah, there's so many competitions on the offensive line. And like you said, Eddie, this time last year was when we started hearing the Jaden Jackson stuff. And we had kind of known coming in that he was going to be somebody that could maybe contribute. But this is when we started hearing, oh, he has a chance to maybe start for Oklahoma. And so I wonder who's going to be. My guess is Elijah Thomas. I think we're going to come out of the spring and we're going to say Elijah Thomas has a chance to play a lot of football for Oklahoma next year as a true freshman.
Fascinated to see what this whole thing looks like with Jaren Kanak on the offensive side of the ball. Also fascinated just to see, and we've seen a little bit of it just on social media and things, but it's time. Danny Okoye. I'm ready to see this guy in action and doing things that I think, you talk to people or you hear people talk about kind of behind the scenes. The buzz for Danny Okoye is off the charts. And Josh, I know that we've talked about him for the last 2 or 3 years. It seems like this guy's kind of that next coming of big time player on the defensive side of the ball.
Every week almost it comes up in board chat, like, who are the breakout guys? Who are the guys to be ready for? I'm with George and Elijah Thomas. That buzz is very real. It sounds, again, I agree with him, very Jaden Jackson-like. And Danny, it just feels, like you always hear that cliche, but it's a cliche because it happens. Feels like that light starting to come on for Danny, like he's starting to figure out what it looks like. Because, again, guys, I think I'm the only guy that went and covered a Noah game during his high school career. And if you haven't seen that level of play, it's kind of hard to appreciate the jump that you're making to go from there to, okay, you're playing in the SEC. That's like going from, I don't know, like UCO to the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, you are making a seismic leap in what you're doing. So, I think that is, but again, when you talk about him, all he's done is add size. Even when we saw him last summer, it was like, holy crap, he's already put on 15 pounds of muscle and just looked great. But he's so twitchy. He's just so unique. He has a chance to be a bigger, more prototypical R. Mason Thomas. Like that, I believe that. I know that is. We all think the world of R. Mason Thomas, and obviously he's got a chance to be maybe the premier defensive end in the SEC this year. I mean, that's a real thing that could happen. And Okoye has a chance in time, not this year, but in time to be a better player, in my opinion. I think that is in the cards. That is a possibility. And I think maybe this year you start to see the fruits of all that recruiting. R. Mason Thomas, P.J. Adebaraway, Danny Okoye, and if they can get Marvin Jones Jr. on track, I mean, guys, that's a foursome of defensive ends that has a chance to be truly difference makers.
All right, we've got a first stickball coming up this week as well, so we don't need to get too in depth. But obviously, softball, a little bit, kind of a struggle, if you will, for them. I mean, going to overtime.
It's hilarious to me, like how we talk about the softball program, because I heard you on with Matt Ravis this morning, and we're like, there's so many questions, and there are questions about like how this how the lineup's coming together, getting production from some of the freshmen, some of the new faces, but at the same time, they're the number one team in the country again. They've ascended back to the top spot, which is just, I don't know. It just shows and represents like how good, how dominant this thing has been, that they're 14-0, and there are questions. I mean, we sat here on Monday afternoon and watched them kind of struggle, go through the motions against Bowling Green, had to get a walk-off from Cassidy Pickering, and then obviously they run-ruled Abilene Christian. But this is the final weekend. They play non-conference this weekend. Next weekend, they're headed to South Carolina for the start of SEC play. And I don't think that South Carolina, I might be speaking out of turn, I don't think that they're like the upper echelon of the SEC, anymore. But you start getting into this thing, and it's going to be a regional almost every week.
I would think South Carolina, though, is one of those, they're definitely one of those programs where they can kind of come out of nowhere. And
I'm sure. I really don't know. I don't know
what
what their situation is this year.
All right. So stickball coming, first episode of that. Like I said, you've still got the Family Business with Chris Plank, great episode up from this week as well. Got past all the weather. It's
South
been
Carolina's
just beautiful.
16-0 in top 20.
Okay, there you go.
So they're pretty damn good. They just
you mean someone put them in a poll for being undefeated?
Yeah, no kidding. Now they played, I guess, 10 more games, but Baseball America, you should be shamed. And here's the deal. This is my big argument. I don't care where they're at in the rankings. I think like arguing, they should have been 10 or they should have been 11 or whatever. It's kind of stupid. It's all going to take care of itself. But the fact that Baseball America just completely omitted them, like didn't even put them in.
After 2 wins over top 10
It's
teams.
a joke. Like I don't get it. But unbelievable weekend down around Rock. We sat up here and watched Kyson pitch on Friday. After the solo shot in the first inning, he was about as dominant as I've seen him. I was talking to somebody within the program, and they said that they think he is the most talented pitcher, and this is including Cade Cavalli, including Cade Horton, the most talented pitcher since John Gray in 2013.
Wow. And it turns out Minnesota kind of had some sticks.
Yeah, I never know if Skip's being like just completely honest, but he said it again on Tuesday after the game. He thinks Minnesota's they're going to make some noise in the Big Ten. He thinks they're going to be pretty good. So it was a great win.
What was it, Oregon State the next day?
Yeah, Oregon State on Saturday when they won 8-4, got out to the 8-2 lead. They were incredible. Malachi, his final line didn't look as good as he pitched. Pitched his ass off to keep OU in that game before they got the bats going in the fourth inning, and then the kind of the marathon on Sunday against Virginia and winning
just
in 12
gutsy,
innings.
Grinded out win.
Virginia is an unbelievable lineup. I hate to think that they are going to go 9 innings with just one hit the rest of the season. Like
look, if you need a roller coaster to follow besides OU basketball, just wait till Hit takes the mound.
And I think a lot of that has to do with what he didn't do last year. Like, oh God, he's coming in, but then he got himself in trouble. He walked a guy, but he was able to get out of it on Sunday. I was super impressed with Jaden Barfield being thrown in there, making his debut. He pitched in back-to-back state championship games down in Texas. He has a chance. I mean, from top to bottom, obviously Kyson and Malachi and Cam Johnson and Cade Crossland, those are your headliners. But what they were able to get from the bullpen, That's pretty promising stuff. They had some guys that have some really good stuff coming out of the bullpen. I've been super impressed with Gavin Jones, a two-way player. He started at DH yesterday. He pitched on Sunday as part of the 7 or 8 guys that they threw out there against Virginia. It's early, and they're just 7-0 right now, but they have the makings right now of what looks to be a very good baseball team. And it should be a lot of fun to cover this thing here moving forward.
Oh, and by the way, just one of our best players, Jackson Nicholas, his replacement just tends to be one of the best.
Oh,
freshmen.
Kyle Branch has been unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember a kid coming in and having a better start to his career. Skip would be quick to point out that he fucked up a couple plays last night, like missed a double cut where he should have been. Didn't cover a base that, you play against a really good team, they're going to take that base against you. But from what he's been able to give you and winning the MVP of a Round Rock tournament that was extremely talented, it's kind of incredible.
All right.
How's the crowd yesterday?
It was good. The weather was great. It was hard to beat yesterday. And the weather's supposed to be pretty good the rest of the week. They got 4 more home games starting today, finishing out a 2-game series against Texas Southern. And then they got CSUN coming into town. So it was good. It was good. I think there was a step in the right direction. I think they had just over 2,200, I want to say. And for a Tuesday night, if you want to bitch about that, I guess you just kind of be miserable.
You know what the world really needed besides it to stop being so cold outside? Is it needed internet scandal that it could follow more easier than the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds thing, because that's just way too confusing. But I think the Mary-Kate saga just has everyone enthralled with how easy a scandal can develop.
Last night I declared it maybe my favorite top 25 story of this century. I might be pulling back a little bit because I guess at the end of the day, there are some lives that have definitely been ruined. But from an internet just degenerate standpoint, I don't think it could have got better yesterday.
So is it 100% true?
I don't know.
No one knows.
No one knows. I do think that the dad's a scumbag. Sleeping with your son's girlfriend is
on multiple occasions, allegedly.
Maybe the worst thing that could. I just can't imagine being the kid. The whole thing is just so insane. But then you had all the burner accounts yesterday with all the information that we found out about these people, and who knows if it's true or not.
Of course, it's Ole Miss too.
Yeah.
Of all the schools,
oh, yeah.
It's perfect.
It is perfect.
Somehow Lane Kiffin's going to get involved in this.
I'm surprised he hasn't tweeted a link to a story yet.
That'd be amazing. Heard about this? ? It's crazy. She is hot though.
Guys, the thing that's been crazy is reading all the screenshots.
Oh yeah.
And I'm someone who says too much, but these sorority girls and their even in their messaging, is about every third word. And I'm like, I can barely read this. It's so it's such an old guy thing to say. But it's just crazy to read these comments.
I thought that too, Josh. I bet they're doing the voice text.
That's what I
where
thought
they're
too,
because there's no way they're typing out that many times.
Reading it was oh my God, where am I in this paragraph?
Yeah.
The whole thing's just insane. But it's good to be part of the SEC community.
I can't wait for the Netflix or Hulu documentary in a couple years on it.
Well,
it's coming. It's coming, and we'll watch it. All of us will watch it.
There's something that has to happen. There's something that has to happen before that to get to the Netflix point.
Yeah.
Oh no, Eddie, that's so dark.
That's true though. That's a fact. It's a fact.
You're not wrong, but it's dark.
I think somebody's gonna have to die. But
I'm not even serious. If you're sitting in the office or you're doom scrolling and you just need something to do before you go to bed, just type in Mary-Kate and go look at the top. She was the
number one trending subject in the world yesterday. That's insane.
But just the memes, just under top. It's just entertainment for days.
It was a very good fodder for the guy group, the guy text group, the chat group. It was a very, very good day yesterday.
Do you guys watch Love Is Blind?
No, we don't have young girlfriends.
Can't say that I do.
But you guys would love it.
Yeah.
If you guys like this Mary-Kate drama, you guys would love Love Is Blind.
Yeah,
There's so much.
Isn't Love Is Blind just to trap boyfriends into saying things to questions that their girlfriends ask them?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't know what you're talking about. But what I'm saying is that it's more about. It's just there's a lot of drama going on. and there's a lot of drama off the show. That
I'm
I
on the
think is
record.
great.
Southern Charm is my limit. Like, I watch Southern Charm. I do in little doses.
What was that trash show that we watched with the parents that got locked up?
Oh,
Crisley.
The Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies.
Yeah.
I saw an update on them. Somehow it came across my Instagram reel. Like I think the mom just got denied bond or bail
They
or
keep trying
something.
to get paroled.
Lock them up. Lock both of them up. Got to pay your taxes.
The Grizzlies know best. I think that was what it was called.
Yeah, or something like that. The kid is like a freshman at Alabama this year.
Yeah.
It would have been great if he would have been wrapped up with Mary Kate.
There's so many Tom Brady memes on this thing. It's great.
It's sad, but it is great, and we can be sickos about it.
That was the.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I need you to send that to me because I'm going to send that to people.
You're going to have to put that on the board now.
Yeah,
people are going to have to see whatever you're talking about.
No, I could get canceled for that.
No, you can't get canceled for passing along something that is out there. It's out there on the internet.
Okay. All right. We've been going for long enough.
Welcome to OU, Jim Nagy.
Welcome to
Crazy.
OU, Jim Nagy.
I still can't believe it. I do think that, like, final statement, it's just a great day for the athletic department to have a little bit of foresight that I know that people we've been critical of, I've been critical of, and you just hope that it all kind of comes together. And, ultimately, Brent Venables and, to a certain extent, Joe Castiglione is going to be judged on how they can turn this football program around. And it's still extremely important that they find some type of success in 2025.
I can't wait till OU loses to Michigan week 2 and there's the fire Jim Nagy thread.
Well,
I
think that
Crimson
would be fair.
Corner.
I think that will be fair. He's used to it. He knows the ins and outs.
The ups and downs and the what have you.
Sure.
All right. That's going to do it. Thanks, Josh. Thanks to Eddie and George. I'm Carey Murdoch. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.